Yep.
All right. If you've ventured into the wild world of TikTok, chances are you've encountered the account Phant0m Un1verse. Here with us tonight is one of my personal favorite content creators, Rivus Orion. Rivus, welcome to Beam Screams and Dreams. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you guys? Thanks for having
We're
me.
doing
Good.
absolutely great. Yeah.
Happy to have you here. I was talking with Ashley. You've been one of my favorite accounts to follow since the beginning of quarantine and everything like that. How did you get started, and what brought you into your content that you create? Is pretty specific. Where'd your interest start there? And could you tell us a little bit about what you create?
So I guess from the beginning, I've always been relatively interested in ancient artifacts. Not so much the history, but like, how old is that thing? Wow, that's so cool. But, as a kid, it was just, that's as far as it went. But then back in 2015, Joe Rogan had the Randall Carlson on his podcast. And through that conversation, he went over like the geological features of the end of the last ice age when, we had massive flooding from the glacial ice and, cosmic events and all sorts of mythology and stuff like that. And, just watching that one podcast just sent me down this rabbit hole. I just consumed as much of Randall Carlson's videos as I possibly could. I've literally watched all of them. Haven't found one I haven't seen yet. And just anything on the topic of ancient history, ancient mysteries, and what was mankind doing during the Ice Age has kind of been my thing. And I just kind of went down this rabbit hole for 5 years. What I would do is, with my current job, I would just plug in and listen to anything, like audiobooks, podcasts, documentaries, YouTube videos, anything audible I can get my hands on. I would just sit there, file metal, and just, disappear into classroom lectures of history. A funny story. I had a friend who was looking through my YouTube history one time because he's like, what do you watch? And he's like, dude, I can't watch any of these videos. I'm like, why? Because they're all 2-hour-long classroom lectures about history, and I just can't do that. I'm like, yeah, well, when you're actually interested, it is pretty dope. So I gained all this knowledge. I just had this like packed in my head and like had a bunch of notes that are probably super complex for somebody who has never seen it before to read. But there's a game called Overwatch, and I would get on there and just screw with people. I'd create a lobby called "This Information Will Shatter Your Reality," and people would join in, and I would just lay out this argument that I had constructed from all this information that I had collected on the argument for humans during the Ice Age being a technologically advanced civilization. Obviously, you get people that argue with you, but the majority of the people I spoke with came out just completely like, wow, dude, you have completely shattered my reality. So
one thing that I find very interesting about your content is that you go against a lot of basically what the History Channel has become, as you know, is the entire Von Daniken style of ancient aliens. And I feel like you flip the script on them in a very intelligible way that I feel like maybe you should be the one running some of these History Channel programs at this point. And specifically when it comes to what we were talking about right there, which is the Younger Dryas period.
Definitely. And that's one thing not enough people know about. Like we're talking, but this is an event that took place literally yesterday on a geological sense of time. And most people aren't aware of exactly when the Ice Age was. 15,000 years ago was the peak, basically just now coming out of the last glacial maximum, where we had 17 million square miles of ice, 2 miles thick, covering the northern hemisphere of the planet. And between 13 and 11,000 years ago, the climate changed completely. There's strong evidence to suggest that the Earth was hit by a comet. The Earth passed through the tail of a disintegrating comet and was hit by multiple objects from space, causing this massive temperature fluctuation that resulted in all of that glacial ice melting rapidly. And all of that water had to go somewhere. So the ocean levels rose by 400 feet to where they are now in our modern day. And 12,000 years ago, when this took place, humans just like you and I were walking the surface of the Earth. And it would have appeared to whoever survived off of any coastline or island as if their entire world just went underwater. And go ahead.
It would be a great a story passed down as an explanation for the flood myth, of course.
Many flood myths.
They have one in like every ancient culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Now floods happen all the time. Some people be like, oh, floods happen all the time. It's just a collection of everybody experiencing a flood at some point. It's like, well, yeah, you're not wrong. But we're talking about the big one.
Yeah.
The one that literally killed like I forget the exact percentage, but 127 species of megafauna, massive animals, went extinct alone in that time period. Mammoths hung in there for a little bit while on a little tiny island. They became pygmy mammoths, little tiny mammoths. It's actually really hilarious. But
Sure, I think they were
yeah,
coexisting with the Homo floresiensis. Is that where they
that sounds right. They survived on this little island right above Siberia that
Sure.
stayed above the water. Yeah, so they were around for a while. But the current model is that prior to 11,000 years ago and back, humans were just small hunter-gathering tribes still living in caves, hunting mammoths into extinction with stone spears, and farming along a civilization hadn't started yet. And it's like, okay, so we're talking humans caused 2 million mammoths to go extinct in the span of just a few hundred to 1,000 years. I mean, when you look at all the tusks that they were pulling out of Siberia during the 1800s for the ivory, it'll blow your mind just looking at shelves and shelves and shelves of hundreds of thousands of tusks.
Oh, we also even
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me.
we
Sorry.
even know from even just mainstream history courses that civilizations weren't just hunter-gatherer tribes back then either. Like whenever, like what they teach us, what is the status quo for history? I'm taking my second history class this semester in college, and I'm just like, well, I've already learned all this stuff, but you don't ever really dive into why. It's always just like, well, we're going to study this one region, or we're going to study this one people.
Right, it's the Assyrians,
and everyone else,
the Babylonians.
Everyone else was just a tribe person moving here around. But we found these same civilizations all over the world, dating back to the same periods.
I mean, definitely. I mean, and like, think of how many like cultures that have vanished between 11,000 years ago and now that we don't even know about. That they never gained such a an abundance and like a population to where they didn't make their mark on the history. And that happens often. That's just with small tribes, but metal doesn't last an extremely long period of time if it's not preserved in any way. So if these people 11,000 years ago or prior had any way of doing anything with any type of steel, it really wouldn't be recognizable as anything today from that amount of time. And I give people the thought experiment of, let's imagine that our civilization went through the same kind of cataclysmic event of 12,000 years ago at the onset of the Younger Dryas, where we experienced objects entering the atmosphere, burning 10% of the biomaterial on the surface of the earth, massive horrendous floods from the melting of the glacial ice, never-ending torrential rain and hurricane winds on a scale you couldn't possibly imagine, with massive earthquake and volcanic activity, with the ocean levels rising 400 feet over a period of time. Needless to say, that would really fucking suck, if I'm able to swear. Sorry. And so let's now imagine that a broken New York now goes under 400 feet of water and then just sits there for 12,000 years. And to give you some perspective, the Titanic has been underwater for over 100 years now, and at its current rate of decay, give it another 500 to say 1,000 more years for enough time, and you would no longer recognize there was ever a steel boat even there. It's going to dissolve into this lump, and the ocean floor is eventually just going to consume it.
Right.
So covered by sediment as well.
It's a all these things are made from organic material to begin with. Right. So it's only natural that when it decays, it's going to become the same thing. It's not going to stay in this like state of, here's a big iron beam.
Exactly. Permanent preservation.
And the Titanic's actually going to be lasting longer because of the part of the ocean where it's at. If it was further up, to a reef where like more, sunlight was getting to it, the amount of coral and life that would attach itself to it, it would just look like a part of the ocean. Even though there's still a boat there, you wouldn't be able to see it anymore. So anyway, let's now imagine that New York and everything off of every coastline and island disappears under hundreds of feet of water and just sits there for 12,000 years. Well, we could probably agree at that point that most, if not everything, would either be completely gone or unrecognizable to whoever would exist later if they searched their oceans to begin with. And keep in mind, we've only searched 8% of our oceans today. I'm pretty sure that's the number. So the only thing any survivors would still see from us if they made it that far and long would be whatever was still on land. And the only material, if it wasn't destroyed, changed, or manipulated by future cultures to move into these areas, that maybe might retain a glimpse of what it was before through the thousands upon thousands of years of erosion it's about to go through, would be whatever we carved from stone, like Mount Rushmore and the ruins of Hoover Dam. And all we have from our ancient past is what they carved from stone. And they are the greatest structures this planet has ever seen and has never seen again since.
Well, I found that fascinating too, and I've seen in a couple of your videos some of the references you even make to the Sphinx and the different types of erosion that we find on the Sphinx as well. You know, water erosion at the bottom and sand erosion at the top.
Wind erosion.
Wind and sand erosion,
Mhm.
the gradual erosion. And thinking about these coastal areas too, if we raise the sea level 400 feet from where it was, where does most of human civilization live? On the coast, always
yeah.
have.
Yep.
So anything that was of any kind of substance would have disappeared.
You're
by
obviously
now,
going to impact the population immediately.
which is something I think of a lot. You know, think of a landmass like North America and what could have been here, for instance, South America. They also had Doggerland. Is that right? Doggerland off the coast of Australia.
Hmm.
Tons of places that are underwater, giant land masses underwater. With that, I mean, we were talking about the Younger Dryas. I've written a note about the Hiawatha Crater that had been discovered as well as a possible impact site for
And
that
was
Younger Dryas impact
Greenland?
in Greenland.
Yes.
Could you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we don't, unfortunately, we don't know a whole lot about it yet because NASA found it. It was back in 2017. I'm pretty sure it was when they found it. And it was just from like a satellite imagery or something like that. And they've done LiDAR on it, I'm pretty sure, that to where we can see the actual crater. Because right now it's still, the crater itself is still full of ice,
Under the cap.
but the glacier is retreating enough to where, you know, you can see the outline of it. And they're estimating it to be between at least 13 to possibly 200,000 years old. Might have been 2 million. I'm not positive on that, but they do date it to be a younger crater with how preserved it is. Now, there's two problems with that. That it's either that it's younger or that it's been preserved underneath that ice cap for an extremely long period of time. And until people get down there, you know, to actually date it further, because dating, I'm pretty sure you have to like be there in person to take samples,
Core
you know how
samples,
old that
right?
kind of thing
Probably
is.
starting out at least.
Yeah.
We just don't know yet, and that's just it. It's a candidate, likely candidate for an impact spot, and it needs to be studied more, 100%, and that's just in its infancy.
So,
Go ahead.
The Younger Dryas period, is there an estimate, or do you have a theory about how long it took for the seas to rise and how long that the Earth was experiencing that?
So I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but let me walk you through exactly basically what took place. So you're at the peak of the ice age 15,000 years ago. And then around 12,800 years ago, the whole planet gets a massive spike in temperature globally, likely the initial impact event that sends the whole planet up into this superheat and then back down into the super cold freezing. And that freezing event is called the Younger Dryas. It's 1,100 years of freezing, gripping essentially the entire planet. And then abruptly, around 11,800 years ago, I want to say, might have been 6, we come right back up out of that freezing. Now, during those two heat spike events, the initial one and the second one, we have two pulses called meltwater pulse 1A for the initial one and meltwater pulse 1B for the last one. There was melting happening in between all that, but essentially there was a massive influx of water into the ocean at the beginning, it paused, and then the rest of it all of a sudden just came out of nowhere. So it was basically two flooding events, technically. But it's estimated that it took, you know, it's possible that the ocean levels rose at least 25 to 28 feet in one day at one point.
Wow.
And that would that would be bad.
Yeah, that's substantial.
As somebody that's native from New Orleans and we're already 10 feet underwater, 25 plus feet coming at once after having seen just Hurricane Katrina, 9 feet. See the damage something like that could do.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine the catastrophe that.
I mean, we'd be lucky here in Colorado not to get water.
Any coastal region would just be absolutely devastated. To build on that Younger Dryas and the idea of, you know, lost technology, this is something that Ashley and I had spoken about before, is when you do see civilization start to pick back up, Who do you see? You see Babylonians, the Assyrians, and those don't come from
the Akkadians, the Egyptians, but we also
And
have
they're-
all of
right.
the East Asian empires as well.
And civilizations like that don't just rise overnight. They do take thousands of years of knowledge being gained and passed down for you to build something of substance that could even be considered an empire.
That's just it, though. That's the crazy thing. It's as if the earliest civilization already knew it all.
Exactly.
Right.
They just had it. It's like they were already writing it down and they knew it perfectly, essentially, from our perspective. And it's like, how did they do all that? Just yesterday, they were living in caves. Where are they writing all this stuff down with? Yeah.
And with a site like Göbekli Tepe,
Mm-hmm.
you have in Turkey, that's, I think, now dated to about 12 to 13,000 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, we're already seeing carvings and proto, almost hieroglyphic language, that did not arise overnight. I think that the theory holds a lot of water for that Younger Dryas impact, and for there to have been a society that was capable of, technologically advanced, thought and process as well.
Well, what's the scope of technological advance that you describe when you talk about these ancient people?
Well, let me put it into perspective, coming to the Great Pyramid. Okay, this is what whoever they were capable of doing if hypothetically the Great Pyramid is way older than we originally thought. Okay, got to put that in there. Okay, I don't believe the old Kingdom Egyptians built the Great Pyramid. Let's just get that out of the way. So let's imagine this. We today are going to build a 4-sided pyramid that size, consisting of 2.3 million individual multi-ton stone blocks, some of them up to the size of a minivan, weighing as much as a semi-truck. And the internal stones are quarried from granite, carved out of the rock from 500 miles away in Aswan. And it's cut so perfectly to each other that you can't fit a razor blade in between the blocks as they butt up to each other. If you were to cut one of those internal blocks wrong, or just set it down wrong by a degree, each block after that, above it or around it, would then be wrong and gradually worsen in error as construction continued, causing the internals to warp, and if bad enough, making the entire pyramid bulge, lean, or spiral before reaching the top and not come to a perfect point with all of its corners. That's for a 4-sided pyramid. Most people aren't aware that the Great Pyramid is an 8-sided pyramid. At the center of each side, there's another corner that divides that triangle into two. It has like this concavity in it. Actually,
Sure.
I don't have, oh yeah, it's right here. Boosh, okay? So those lines represent another corner at the center of the Great Pyramid, right? Okay, so.
I would have to go ahead and say right out of the gate, that's something I did not know.
Oh yeah, man. Go look it up. Just type on Google Images, Great Pyramid of Giza, 8 sides, and just look at it.
Okay.
So on a 4-sided pyramid, that's difficult. Put 8 sides on your pyramid, like the Great Pyramid, and you complicate the geometry of the structure alone so drastically mathematically that you are at least 8 times more likely to get that precision and symmetry wrong. And that doesn't include the rooms and hallways on the inside. That intricacy is staggering. And what we were taught is that the Old Kingdom Egyptians, 4,500 years ago, roughly, built the Great Pyramid using copper chisels and stone hammers with sleds because the wheel had not been introduced into Egypt yet, and they were able to do it from start to finish in 20 years. So if we today were going to build that structure that way in 20 years, we would have to continuously place a perfectly cut block perfectly every 5 minutes, 24 hours a day, nonstop for 20 years. And that level of precision, stamina, and speed is not achievable with our current economic systems, nor our technology today. Just the conveyor belt system of stone alone to move it to the site would take an industrial scale unprecedented in history. And this is just for one pyramid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
And
pretty fascinating.
There's whole complexes.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the pyramids, but also their temples and their incredibly massive statues and structures.
Yeah, everything else is that's also going on in Egypt. The wars, the famines, the disease, everything is still happening to these people. They're not living in paradise.
Right. And all the people, like the theory or the common theory is that it's just all the people that live in the kingdom are building the pyramid. It's like the farmers over there cutting the
Right.
stones and just
You
putting it
still
up
have
there.
to grow your wheat. You still
Right,
have
you
to
still have to
fish.
do
You
all
still
these,
have-
but at the end of the day, you got to
Right.
go build the pyramid for Pharaoh.
Well, you can't really build anything in any society without a surplus of food and resources.
Well,
first of all.
that is a possibility, but it doesn't, like, causation doesn't equal, or correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right. Let's say that it would require a massive network. If that force needed to be mobilized, that we couldn't even really get together to get today. I mean, how were you able to supply everybody with the food and resources necessary to keep them full-bellied, muscles working, able to move all of the material? I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah, and what's hilarious is that the narrative since the 1800s, it's recently changed, so I'll give them credit for that, is that they basically whipped people to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, we
Just
were
slaves.
discussing that earlier. And it's like, if you have these enslaved people who aren't, one, they're not part of your culture. Two, they're not part of your, they're not part of your society. So they don't have the knowledge that you already have. Why would they be able to so effectively and so efficiently create something that is like your legacy,
Right.
When
Yeah.
they wouldn't have that information. You wouldn't be
Or
able to give it to someone and
Not
say,
actively try to subterfuge,
Yeah.
and sabotage you at any step of the way.
Yeah,
that-
and then do all that, do everything, and then not put your name on it when you're done.
Right. Yeah. Kyle was here. Yeah. And I'll say this too. I'm a machinist by trade. So to see these works where there is not but a micron or two of space between these stones, I have CNC lathes. I have every piece of high tech equipment you could possibly imagine to make landing systems for airplanes. Right.
Nice.
Even with that,
you guys still have a threshold.
even with that, there is a threshold within those that we are not hitting all the time. There are still mistakes. So there's something that was known that was lost for sure. I mean, I'm there with each part measuring it with a micrometer, and I can see variations enough to where if it's stacked over time, then your airplane's not landing correctly,
Right.
Oh yeah.
let alone giving you a structure that is going to withstand tens of thousands of years, 10,000 years worth of war, erosion, anything you name it. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and we don't have the full erosion on it because all of the pyramids, at least the three main ones, used to be completely encased in casing stones that was smooth all the way up and down.
Right.
And those stones likely had the original weathering on them, but they were removed not too long ago to repair Cairo. So tragic. It's like the 1300s.
Pretty unfortunate, to just trash a piece of history. But I mean, we still see evidence of that today. Somebody invades somewhere, they're constantly destroying ruins and evidence of previous civilizations because it doesn't fit their ideology or maybe necessarily even their aesthetic. So I find that. So of all the places that you've studied, what to you is the most fascinating?
The most fascinating place. I mean, I've been pretty obsessed with Egypt.
Yeah.
I think there's something about that place that was meant to be there for us. That's what I feel.
You look back at even, just like I was talking about earlier, their mainstream history, and they had such a higher, like more elevated kind of social climate for a lot of people, considering the time. And like when you compare them to other ancient civilizations, there was a lot more, like even like poor people were able to have like, here's my house servant to help me with my kids or help me make beer or bread or whatever. Like it seemed like there was a lot more comfortable living, even though they were like not fully like technologically advanced as we are right now.
Well, going into what Rivus was saying as well is that he's not saying that these the Egypt that we even know of was the Egypt that built the Great Pyramids in the first place. So and that would say that the original builders were sometime pre-Younger Dryas, and that where the Egypt that we all know and study is living in the ruins of that civilization.
Yeah, and I would say that's the case for the majority of the cultures we are studying in these times. I think that that we live on a car crash, and we had no idea. Something happened to this planet that completely changed everything about it, to the type of life that was walking around on it, to the very surface of the earth was changed. and just the fragmented shadow of what was before peeking out through, what we have found so far. And one of the big things that a lot of people don't know about is the Great Line that goes around the planet. Have you seen that one?
Is that going with like the ley lines, or is this okay, yeah, kind of linking the sites of some of our greater structures that we found, right?
Yeah, so starting at the pyramids in Giza, and it's backwards to this, unfortunately, but going
We're
across
seeing it the right way, so it works out
Yeah.
perfectly.
Oh, really? Very
Yeah.
good. Okay, well, it's backwards to me. Anyway, so starting at Giza, going across the Sahara through the Atlantic Ocean, across South America, through the Pacific Ocean to Easter Island on the most remote opposite side of the planet, all the way back around, back to the pyramids, are 21 ancient mysterious sites, all on this same line with remarkable precision to one another. And many of the big important ones, like Giza, parts of South America, and Easter Island, are spaced apart from one another using the golden ratio. And whoever was building the massive megalithic stonework, like what we find in Giza, South America, and on Easter Island, had the capability to quarry, move, and lift unbelievable large masses of rock above your head, and cut and shape the stone with such a level of precision that you can't fit a razor blade and sometimes a human hair in between the blocks. Many, if not all of these sites, have remarkable connections and astronomical alignments with the stars in the sky, along with sharing identical architecture, stone cutting, and locking techniques, making many of these walls earthquake-proof, which is why they have lasted as long as they have. And according to our current models of history, the majority of the people building these structures had absolutely no contact with one another.
Right. Yeah, I would say it implies a much greater global network of passing knowledge and travel, on a global scale. I don't see how else it would be possible.
I don't either. And the thing is, like, each of these sites have been places that mankind has seen as sacred for an extremely long time. And they've purposefully been preserved and rebuilt upon in many of these areas. So it's kind of like, that's suspicious.
Yeah.
Why are they picking that spot?
That's insane. That
Interesting.
It's all off of that golden ratio as well.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal.
Definitely. And there's this dude, I forget his name. I did a TikTok about it a long time ago, but this guy did a TED Talk about how he was like researching satellite orbits and stuff like that. And man, I wish I remembered his name. But anyway, he typed in a 2-day orbit in this program he was using, and the orbit literally goes almost perfectly across that line.
So they were
ancient
tracking,
structures.
they're tracking the stars at the same time they're tracking these spaces in this exact line all the way around the globe in ancient times when people are like, nope, nobody was even here.
Right.
Yeah. I think the idea that humans during the Ice Age were a global, technologically advanced civilization like we are today, and I would argue even greater, makes way more sense than all of this just randomly popping up out of nowhere, randomly, and giving birth to us. I mean, if there was an advanced civilization during the Ice Age, then could they not have seen that destruction coming? And this goes off into a rabbit hole. Are you ready? Okay.
Sure.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So technologically advanced civilization exists during the Ice Age, and if they saw the destruction coming, could we not assume that they might try to escape the planet? And specifically in the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets that the Bible actually borrows from their flood myth, they speak, it's called the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yes.
They speak of how when the flood came that destroyed everything, the gods, the Anunnaki, left the planet and wept in the heavens while they allowed it to happen. Well, that sounds like that. So let's imagine that this is technologically advanced civilization escapes the planet and go live somewhere else in the solar system or say universe for 3,000 years from the perspective of Earth. They eventually gain the capability of coming back to the planet, and they find nothing but a barren wasteland of what was before, along with the descendants of the survivors, who are just Stone Age people now, with no memory of what was before, only these myths and tales that their ancestors have been passing down for thousands of years. These primitive people have also adopted the ruins of the previous civilization and have built around and on top of their scars, leaving their fingerprints on them, like the pyramids in Giza. So if we imagine an ancient group of people standing there in Egypt, as a ball of light emerges out of the sky and two people walked out and start talking with them, they would absolutely believe that those are some of the gods from their myths or some kind of angel. And the word angel translates from Hebrew as messenger.
Messenger.
And where do angels come from but the heavens? And heaven has been depicted as up by thousands of cultures for thousands of years in their art and writing. And up is also the direction of space. So by definition, angels are extraterrestrials. And if this group of people who fled the planet long ago have been separated from our genetic code for 12,000 years up until present day, while traversing space and time, they would absolutely start to show genetic differences from us. I would even say alien. And this answers two of the main problems a lot of academics have with the idea of aliens. First of all, if they're an alien, they evolved on another planet in another galaxy somewhere really freaking far away. The amount of space they would have to traverse to get here to begin with is astronomical. That's if they even found us. Second, let's say they did get here. If they evolved on another planet, in another atmosphere, in another gravitational field, why would they look anything like anything here on Earth?
Sure.
Why would they have two arms, two legs, two eyes? Okay. Well, here's the answers to those questions. They got here because they never went very far away, and they're humanoid because they are us.
Which I like that theory a lot better than, you hear a lot of
strictly ancient aliens coming in
Right.
and just saying, here, have this technology and
right. There's two theories. Well,
make humanity great.
how many times have you heard they're us that are time travelers from the future where we have evolved? Or the opposite is, or just another theory is that they were just travelers from afar and came here and just decided to share their knowledge, which would be like us trying to, hand a laptop to an ant and say, come on, you got this, man.
Yeah. And that answers that question too. It's like, why would they be interested in us at all? Well, because we are their kin. We're cousins,
Well, that's the mission of every great sci-fi movie. When they go to space, the whole idea is to proliferate the species and one day come back and save it, or
not Star Trek. You have a prime directive. You cannot interfere with
with your
species.
own though, with your own
Sure.
species. I mean, that's the idea. It's always like the thought, the sci-fi theory. It's we're gonna leave the planet, we're gonna take care of it and come back, and it'll all wash over.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we have what people going to Mars with Elon Musk and stuff, and trying to terraform.
Supposedly, we'll see if we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm shaky with the guy who made the Tesla.
Yeah.
He sent a car out.
When the planet can get off its knees, we'll shoot for Mars.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot bigger problems at home that we could probably tackle. Rivus, we've got probably, so we're going to try out something new here. We've got a hat full of questions. This is just going to be something fun to wrap it up with. And we'll kind of just a fun one to see what we come up with here.
All right. These are all random. It's not anything.
All random, unrelated to pretty much anything.
Okay.
Can you do a celebrity impersonation?
My father was a drinker and a fiend. And one night he goes off crazier than usual. Mommy grabs the kitchen knife to defend herself. He doesn't like that. Not one bit. So me watching, he takes the knife to her, laughing while he does it. He turns to me and he says, "Why so serious?" He comes at me with the knife. "Why so serious?" And sticks the blade in my mouth. I got that wrong.
That was so good.
That was awesome.
Way better than I could do. I've gotten none. We don't know what all these questions are, so that was our first time doing it, which is really
That was
fun.
incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Gotcha. Or you got Bane. He's like, "Oh, so you think darkness is your ally?" The dark.
I love it, man. I love it. Rivus, I can't thank you enough for coming to speak with us tonight. Like I said, we've been big fans for a while. We're glad we were able to get you on to come talk to us, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of you in the future. We're definitely going to be sharing not only your TikTok but your YouTube channel. Is there anything else you'd like to share that we could put into the links of the links in this description?
Yeah, I've got an Instagram as well, so you can toss that in there. Just everything's the same, Phant0m Un1verse, and I think that covers it. I appreciate it.
Right on. Thank you so much for all that awesome information. Love the perspective. I think that is something that a lot of people try to talk about, but don't really have the words, and you're really able to like kind of illuminate that in a way that people can understand it,
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
That's
you guys should definitely check that out too. Click those links down in the description to follow Rivus Orion.
And thanks again, Rivus.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good one.
All right.